Excellency, among Godswill Akpabio, who is the governor of Akwa Ibom State. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it was interesting your response yesterday while that session came on. But again, one wonders, I mean, on a regular basis, you see some honoring you here, there, and people ask, is this what governance is about? I mean, how are all this coming in? And then you're here for the Brace Commission. We're supposed to be seeing some initiatives coming on together with the commission, and all of those that happens. Is it governance, or are you doing something differently?
I believe we are in the right track, I should say so. I've been honored severally by various media houses, by various organizations, both corporate and otherwise, and I was also privileged to be honored by the Federal Republic of Nigeria as commander of the Order of the Niger, one of the few governors so honored whilst in office. And I don't think these things are just because of Godswill Akpabio. I would rather think it's because of the different focus that we are putting to governance. It's because of what is on ground. Like a colleague of mine just said when he appeared here, he said that he wouldn't like to be a governor that everything is, you know, in the media. Everybody's hearing about this, oh, so much is spent on this, the schools are so beautiful, these are the things that are done. Then when you get into the state, you don't see anything on the ground. So mine in Akwa Ibom is very simple. You know, people are talking so much about Akwa Ibom said. Sometimes I love to use the biblical authority to answer them. And I said, look, even when people heard about the good works of Jesus Christ, making the lame to walk, making the blind to see, putting food on the table for people, turning water into wine, there were a lot of people who doubted. In fact, in one of the instances, there was Nathaniel who turned around to one of those who became a disciple of Christ, Philip, and said, can any good thing come from Nazareth? And then, of course, Philip was very angry and said, where is Nathaniel? Is it that he has not been to Israel, to Jerusalem, to hear the things that were happening, or even to witness them? So angry, he retorted. He said, come and see. So my answer always, whenever an award is given to me, people tend to question in some instances, because you must have critics in the society. They say, how can this governor be so honored? My answer always is come and see.
So if we come,
new Akwa Ibom State.
Are we going to see industries there now?
Oh my God, you are talking about just industries. It's not just the function of industries. Even the private sector is already beginning to, you know, to ginger up. For instance, I met a civil service state, and my intention was to turn it from a civil service state into a state that can at least employ people, into a state that entrepreneurship can work. Because that was Akwa Ibom when we were created from Cross River State. You know, we excised from Cross River State. And so I had to focus a lot. Two things. Number one, I made a pedestrian state outside the civil service state. A state where nobody comes to. You only pass through to Calabar or you pass through to Port Harcourt. So I had to create it as a destination. And I said I must bring out a model resort for Nigerians to, you know, go for holidays, to go for conferences and all that. And that is what is happening. And if you are watching or even listening to the news, you'll be amazed that there is no week in Akwa Ibom that we don't have 2 or 3 major conferences happening almost simultaneously. From the Nigerian Army Day celebration that moved for the first time to the South Side and was held there last year, the Securities and Exchange Commission, you come to us. In fact, even as I speak now, on the 10th of May, we have the ICPC coming on a retreat. And for me, I get excited about it because I've created the indices for people to come and actually relax and see things and then think clearly and then plan for the future. So you will see things on ground, to your amazement. I don't love talking about Akwa Ibom because those things are there for all to see. But I'm happy to be on this program to at least articulate my views on what I think the Brace Commission should do to integrate the economy of the region, the regional economy of the South. And based on what I've been able to achieve in 5 years, I think if we remain focused as a region, if the entire region should move at the same pace as Akwa Ibom is moving, I think the future is great for that.
Your Excellency, allow me come in here. In as much as we're talking about regional integration, regional development, how you can bring investment through, I still want us to, this come and see issue you talk about, let's look at your state, for instance. We've been talking about youth empowerment, youth development. Just the same way we have the Almajiris in the north. Once upon a time, we have some issues with people from your own state, someone looking for someone to do some menial jobs, they'll go out for the youth from your state. I see a smile on your face. How are you working in that direction, or have you faced that out to the extent that when I see any educated person as an Akwa Ibomite, and not when I'm looking for a houseboy or a house girl, I come to your state?
Well,
as bad as it sounds, but that was the reality.
I bet I'll be very angry if you come to my state only to come and look for a houseboy or a house girl. Please don't do that. Well, I realized that the difference between the driver and the car seat owner is education. And that was what I did. I had to tackle that first of all. Because why are these children serving as houseboys and house elves? Outside the unavailability of jobs, most of them did not have the requisite qualifications. And therefore, I had to tackle the issue of education. That was why I declared free and compulsory education from primary school to senior secondary school level in the state. And it's catching on like fire. Thousands of youths have come back from various places to get education. And as I speak now, we have triple school enrollment in the state. The issue now is how do we expand the existing school facilities. We built over 2,500 brand new classroom blocks. And then we are not just declaring free education. I had to sign the Child Rights Protection Law to protect the Akwa Ibom child from stigmatization, such as the stories you used to hear about witchcraft and all that. And then I embellish a provision within that law that makes basic education compulsory for the Akwa Ibom child. And also ensure that I enshrine a provision that prescribes punishment for any guardian or parent that allows a school age or a child of school age to go hawking on the street or to do any kind of menial job while schools are on. Then in addition, I appointed education monitors, special assistants to the governor on education monitoring, and they go around the state, the 3 senatorial districts during school hours. If any child is seen, that child will be apprehended. And as I speak now, I wouldn't say we have 100% enrollment, but I can tell you up to 98%. And many are coming back. We have over 650 children who came back from Gabon, who came back from Lagos, from Abuja, and all that. And then my wife is taking care of them. We set up a home in Uyo, which we call Divine Children's Home, and bought uniforms for them, put some of them in boarding colleges, and then met all of them are now going to school. So we have triple school enrollment in the state. And we are paying subvention, 100 naira per child per term to the school headmaster for logistics, in order to not to make sure, just to make sure the education is really free. We are providing the school textbooks, we are providing other facilities, but then we are also paying subvention at the secondary school level, 300 naira per child per term to the school principal to provide logistics for children. And then I made sure that that program is open to every child of school age that is in Akwa Ibom State, and not only the Akwa Ibom child. Because my policy is simple, that if you educate your children and you don't educate your neighbors, you are preparing armed robbers for your graduate children. And I pointed this out yesterday. That's why school enrollment has quadrupled in this state. And we are now on the third year.
So non-indigens in your state can as well benefit.
Non-indigens are benefiting. Non-indigens, yes, no matter where you come from. No discrimination. Everybody is benefiting. And I'm also paying subvention for the non-indigens. So I can tell you now that even my neighbors now are sending their children to Akwa Ibom schools. That's why yesterday somebody gave me a figure that was so maddening, and I don't want to believe until I go back and take the statistics, and said over 1 million children are already in primary school. I said, my God, in a population of less than 5 million, how can you have up to 1 million people in just junior secondary school? That is happening in the state.
Speaking about figures and statistics, I mean, are you doing anything about reducing recurrent expenditure so that you can concentrate on
then you need to come to Akwa Ibom. I'm not going to be angry with you, but you see, you people have to do a little bit of research, even in journalism, for you to report well. That's a simple truth. The state I run is the only state in Nigeria consistently for 5 years now that has 80% capital outlay in the budget and 20% recurrent. I plug the loopholes of leakages. The same money that we are using to achieve all the things you hear about in Akwa Ibom were the same money that were frittered away by past administrations on either seminars or for Okada riders or seminars for councillors' wives or international trips and all that. So we are doing there's no year that my capital outlay is not 80% capital and 20% recurrent. You can't put something on nothing and expect it to stand. And if you expect the result, you have to do things differently. You see what is happening in the country? If you have a budget at the federal level, for instance, of 78% recurrent and maybe 22% capital, then you expect to do Benin Road. How can you? You expect to put railway on the ground. Where will you? Unless you are just from day one looking at a deficit budget where you are going to the banks or going to the international community to go and look for money. So if you cannot manage what you have prudently, automatically cannot see result. So you go and find out. My capital budget every year, my House of Assembly is aware of this. We block all the loopholes or leakages in the system, and we have been able to achieve 80%, sometimes 82% capital outlay in every budget. And the result is tremendous. Over 260 brand new urban roads spread across the state are completed. We have intervened in federal highways in the state. At least 4 of them are dualized. You come in and then you see street lights all over you. Not talk about urbanization. We are building over 2,000 housing units right now. I'm targeting about 10,000 because of the expansion in the town. We have finished an ongoing airport. We met at 10% on the ground. There was nothing on the ground. But we took it up and we finished the phase with the longest runway in Nigeria. We have gone abroad now for the 3rd year on pilgrimage from 2009 up to today. We are doing pilgrimage from there now for about 4 states of the region. So for me, it's I'm talking about practical things on the ground. I'm not talking about paper things for you to come and see. And you know, we had an ongoing project in the independent power plant in Ikolabasi. We have completed it. We are producing 191 megawatts right now. Outside the issue of transmission and distribution, my state would have been the first state in Nigeria to have 24 hours of power stability. So I'm approaching development with anger. You must be angry at the situation we have found ourselves in this country for you to make a change. And
we can still feel that fire burning. I mean, from the speech that you're giving, one can feel the passion. But this takes us to the issue of politics, and you know how it's been played out in Akwa Ibom State. Last year, when the 2011 elections were approaching, I remember that Akwa Ibom State was one of the states listed as, you know, one of the states that could be politically volatile in terms of security. Are you doing anything to ensure that when 2015 comes, it's not the same situation on ground?
That means you believe the media hype.
This is not the media hype. This is a report from the SSS. This is the SSS report.
I'm telling you, that is what the politicians wanted the world to believe. This was clear propaganda.
From the SSS as well?
I'm giving you stories that there were 2. Well, I haven't seen your report.
Well, the list was from the SSS, and we had them in the studios with us.
What actually happened was that because of the incident that we had on 22nd March 2011, where the opposition unleashed mayhem on the state, burned so many houses, burned so many cars, or burned so many keke napep we were planning to give to the public, Akwa Ibom was now regarded as one of the, in quote, flashpoints during the electioneering period, or at least during the main election itself. So they said, okay, this was the state to watch. There was nothing wrong with that. But outside that day's incident, Akwa Ibom still remains one of the safest states in the Niger Delta. That's a simple truth. One of the cities, and one of the most proactive when it comes to security policies. So my state, what you heard on the, if some people said nothing was on the ground in Akwa Ibom, or if you go there, you won't see an airport. I went abroad, I showed the flyovers had completed with dualized thoroughfares, with street lights, to my children in the diaspora, and they shouted, oh, this is computer simulation. This thing is not true. Look, you can't deceive us. Because people were used to governments deceiving them. Nigerians are not used to governments achieving anything. And that's why when I hear stories of lamentations, I get very sad. You must recognize flash points of possible improvements. You know, encourage those flash points, and then see whether these things can spread. That's a simple truth. We must not continue with these stories of lamentations and all that. The problem of Nigeria, outside the economy, had always been leadership. So where there is strong leadership, and then the leadership is focused, and things have been achieved, you must amplify these things. But what do the press say? They tell me most times, Your Excellency, you are doing too much. We cannot report. Because they will not believe us. They will say it's propaganda.
Oh, really?
Bad news. That's what the press tells me. The journalists come to my state and they say, oh, wow, can these things happen? I say, why were you people not reporting? They say, because bad news is good news. If we keep reporting these good things that are happening here, people will not buy our newspapers. People will not want to listen to us because Nigerians believe in bad news. When you report what is happening now,
I'm sure that's a Boko Haram press now.
No, but that's the issue. You see, Boko Haram is affecting Nigeria. It's now becoming like HIV. If you are not affected, you are infected. So I think that's the issue. When the pressman tells you that if we had reported all these things, then they will not read our newspapers, oh, nobody will come near us again, they will think we are mouthpiece of government. I said, then that's a failure. What? Because the journalists must do investigation. And you must bring these things out because of peer review mechanism. We are now trying to make sure that we replicate good governance in all parts of not just the Niger Delta, but Nigeria. If this is what was lacking, And these things are being found in Kontu, in Akwa Ibom. Said, why don't you let the world know? That's why I'm challenging you from channels. I said, come and make a coverage. Come and see the things we have done on ground. It's not about boastfulness. It's about the fact that government can work. Even as a governor, I'm a beneficiary of good governance in the last 5 years in Akwa Ibom State. We have proven that government can work. Okay. You talked about industries. Yeah. How are we tackling the issue of youth? We have different programs. One of them is in agriculture. Yes, okay. Employment generation. We cannot achieve 100% because, of course, you know, the problem took long. We started with about 2 or 3 universities in the country, and maybe 2,000 or 3,000 graduates a year, and then at that time they could be absorbed. We expanded the universities, and eventually we started churning out 400,000 graduates a year, and the jobs were diminishing. Companies were packing away to Ghana and other places because of lack of power. Nobody wants to sustain its industry on diesel. You had Michelin, you had Dunlop, you had all sorts of textile companies in the north. They have all vanished. But yet, we are now producing more than 10 times the amount of graduates that we produced in the 70s. The result is what? You graduate into unemployment, you graduate into crime, you graduate into Boko Haram, you graduate into kidnapping, you graduate into violence. And so every government must make conscious effort to create employment opportunities if we must tackle these issues. And what I've done in Akwa Ibom is that outside what government has been able to do, because the civil service cannot employ all, we have created a lot of jobs because of the number of contractors that are working in the state. There are thousands, and each time you have a new job, new people are getting employed. And outside that, we partnered with the private sector. It will interest you to know that not only did we complete our independent power plant, we thought about gas as far back as 2008. And what my administration did was to partner with the private sector to stay as a middleman and purchase every gas that is produced in Akwa Ibom. 2 things we will achieve. 1, we would have created jobs. And secondly, we would have checked the issue of gas flaring on our shoreline. And that company is from United Kingdom. We have done an investment of over $450 million, not from the state funds. We only deposited about $33 million upfront for future supply of gas. And we are now about to commission a brand new gas processing plant in Esreke, one of my local governments. We've done gas pipeline of over 69 kilometers from there to the independent power plant and also to Aswan. We had done this even in the gas sector before Nigeria started thinking of major investment in gas. That's only one side of it. And we have also encouraged a lot of other entrepreneurs. And people today are building small factories. Some are doing paper mills, some are doing, polythene and all that, and employing over 300, 500 people across the state. In the agricultural sector, we have a program we call Integrated Farmer Scheme. We train graduates and then we empower them with small grants of about 500,000 naira each. Each batch of graduates we trained like 900 per batch, and today thousands of them have benefited. And very recently you heard about the WADED program in Akwa Ibom. That is Women in Agricultural Development Program, where we took about 4,500 women for the first phase, empowered them with 250,000 non-interest, zero interest loans to go into farming, to buy seedlings and improve on production in food. And thousands of women across the state now are engaged. So what we have done in terms of employment is to make sure that we include the people more in governance, and then they are part and parcel of it. And then when I'm giving out the big jobs to big companies, I also ensure that I have what I call inter-ministerial direct labor jobs, where we take jobs of up to 5, 10, 20 billion in a year and farm them out into 5 million. Maybe you are doing a painting of classroom block, renovation of this, a building of solar borehole, and all that, and those things are given to the populace.
How do you select those who get these jobs? How do you select those who get this contract?
No, across the state. We make sure that it's representative, that the entire local governments are involved, because you cannot just focus on one area.
Otherwise there will be no peace. The local government administration, how is it like in your state?
Oh, well, so far it's going well, because I was once a commissioner for local government, and so I've looked at that area. There is peace. Beyond the stability in terms of chieftaincy selection, and the local governments are achieving a lot. That's another focus.
What do they do? What do they really do?
That's the point. People are not, people are not giving credit to where credit belongs.
Because almost everything you do in your state is from the executive. It's not from the state government.
Because I haven't had time, even as a governor, to commission even my own projects. For instance, this year alone, from January this year, my commissioners have been going for commissioning. Over 790 brand new projects completed. And they have been going for the commissioning. I don't like the idea of going to cut a tape to commission a brand new area that I've given electricity to. I met about 2,700 villages in my state. Only 1,062 were connected to the national grid. In 4 years, I've connected 1,500 villages to the national grid. Yes. And we have less than 200 left.
That's the issue. But the local governments can't say the same.
No, the local governments are working because the governor has not gone to commission their projects. I've gone to local governments during the campaigns, and I saw some of them have built fantastic halls for their people for meeting. Some have engaged in agriculture, so many things. You need to go and see these things. I'm telling you a fact that I went around and I was amazed. I now said, okay, give me a dossier of what the local governments have achieved. And they've given them to me. The completed projects across the entire local government. But I haven't had time to personally go down to commission them for the media to know what is happening. But it's left for you to go and investigate, because it is not totally such a lost story in Nigeria. There's a flicker of hope that most of these things were not caused by us. 50 years of malaise of bad administration in Nigeria, of taking one step forward and 5 steps backwards. These things were not caused by the present leadership. But the leadership is changing. It's even getting more refined. If you look at the politics very well, you will know that from 1999, the characters that came into office, particularly those that went to the National Assembly in 1999, those people are now, you know, getting off. You know, the system is getting more refined, and people who really want to achieve something for the society are coming into leadership today.
Do you see your programs being sustained after you've left?
Yeah, well, I believe strongly that they will be sustained, because I don't believe in succession through the might of the governor. I believe in succession through the Spirit of God. I came into office through God. That's why when I was campaigning, we were about 58 in number. And what we said at that time, I kept saying, let God's will be done. Let God's will be done. And coincidentally, my first name is Godswill. So when I emerged, I knew that God's will was done in Godswill. And by implication, God's will was done in Akwa Ibom. The will of God for you is not death. It's not bomb blast. The will of God for you is progress. The will of God for you is development. The will of God for you is peace. That's why Jesus Christ said, peace unto you. Each time God speaks peace. God speaks development. So if we must talk about sustainability of program, even in my state or in Nigeria, we must seek the face of God. Why do you think we have so much problem in terms of violence? Because our children were taken away from God. I went to a federal government college, and all of a sudden, in the middle of my studies, I think in my class 3, somebody came up with a policy and said, no child in federal government college should be allowed to go to church. That it should be, the church is optional. Oh, because some people were converting people from Islam to Muslim, or from Islam to Christianity, and from Christianity to this. And immediately that happened every Sunday morning. Children picked up their football and went to the football field. So morals left school. And the moment the ethics left school, when morals left school, what entered schools? Cultism. That's exactly what happened. So if Nigeria must change, we must begin to seek the face of God. In my state, now outside monthly prayers for the state, outside the yearly solemn assembly, and the one you hear about, the 9,999 choral singers gathered every year to sing during Christmas carols, which we have sustained, the highest number of, the highest assemblage of choral singers in the world today. We make sure that we reintroduce moral education. And as I'm talking to you now, we are trying to post chaplains back to our schools. Every secondary school in the state must have chaplains, so that we can begin to talk to our children, so that let them grow up. When you teach a child the ways of God, that child cannot depart from it. Okay. So what has happened in the country is that we left God out of governance. And if we bring God back into governance, most of the programs that are for the benefit of the people will be sustained, because people will now be afraid. Accountability will come in. People will now, nobody will intentionally go and plan to kidnap another when there is love amongst us. That's a simple truth. Okay. So let us seek the face of God in Nigeria, and things will change.
We've heard people say that if the Brace Commission's vision and policies doesn't align with the Vision 2020, it may not just go well. How does this connect? Does the Brace Commission's vision fit into the Vision 2020 of the federal government?
Well, the way I understand Vision 2020 is that Nigeria should be among the 20 most developed economies in the world, isn't it?
Yes.
So, if the Brace Commission is thinking about regional integration, and is thinking about regional economic upliftment and enhancement of the lives of the people, then automatically it fits into Vision 2020. Because I don't think Vision 2020, otherwise it would just be a question of faith without prayers. if we keep envisioning and talking about vision, and we don't take proactive steps to bring up the vision, it won't make sense. So I don't think that we should just come for a talk shop. I'm thinking that we are here to actually think of practical ways of putting things on ground in order to align with that vision, but at the same time, let us have one region in Nigeria that is very focused. This is an oil-producing region. You know that. And therefore, the region that keeps the economy of this country. And really, in most parts of the world, development starts from where the oil is found and spreads to other parts. Nigeria is the only country where development starts from Abuja and Lagos. And then when it gets towards the oil-producing area, it pales into insignificance. This is where you see thatched roof houses. This is where you see polluted water. This is where you see people living in squalor.
Is that an issue? Is that an issue of the constitution, the law?
It's not just the issue of, it's the issue of leadership, and it's also the issue of justice. It's the fact that Nigeria in the past did not believe that the area that the oil comes from should also be developed. You know, I've told you something in this country. Many people were attempting development on the basis of where the ministers or the presidents came from. And this was the reason that we were not taking actions that were commercially viable. Even in siting industries, most of our industries have died. All over the world, industries are sited nearest to raw materials. In Nigeria, industries were sited nearest to where the ministers came from, where the presidency came from. And then you don't expect sustainability. And that's the paradox of it. So if things are going to change, with the small derivation money that is coming in, this region must sit back and then think of how do we make maximum use of this money, so that at least physically, people can come in here and at least say, well, they've tried. At least this is where money is produced for the country. They've also used what they have been able to get.
It's interesting because, you know, now that the call has been made for a rejigging of the federal accounts allocation formula.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that is being pointed at is that, you know, if you go to the South, you don't really see what the governors are doing. That is one of the, you know, the accusations to the South governors, you know, that you don't really see what they're doing with the resources.
Just two things for you to, those stories have changed. I was one of those. I never believed in government anyway. I'm not a typical politician. I'm an administrator.
So would you believe?
From the private sector.
I
believe the South should have more money.
If I ask, would you think that it should be rejigged so that it is even across board?
I think it should be rejigged in a way that you should give more consideration to the plight of the Niger Delta. Most of us have lost lands that can never be reclaimed again.
But I heard some people will say
that is going on. I mean, you're talking about nothing is on the ground. It's not true. I don't want to.
That's what they say.
That's what they say, but that means that they should come and see whether things have changed. If I don't know any months that I will have even 2 billion naira or 1 billion left in my account, I can't even imagine that month because I have what they call IPCs, interim permit certificate, sometimes over 50, 60 billion because of the kind of jobs I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build the infrastructure in order to attract the investor. Because if you tell the investor to come, in the past we had problems even in my state. I know of a place where we built a battery industry in those days in 1979 in the regime of Clement Dissam, when we had crossover state. But there was no road to that battery industry. You had sandbags and all sorts of things, and at the end you produced, and nobody could even evacuate what you produced, which is the same situation we have found ourselves with power. We are building NIPPs everywhere, but we never thought about the transmission lines. And when we thought about them, proactively, the contractors did not work. And therefore, you produce, of course, the turbines are turning, and yet you cannot evacuate the power. Or in some instances, the turbines cannot turn all in full because there is no gas to turn the turbines. These were some of the mistakes that were made in the past, and we are trying to correct them. If somebody tells you that there's nothing on the ground to see, tell them to come to Akwa Ibom, for instance, and you see the need to ask for 50%. Because as I speak with you now, even the entertainment leisure that I'm building what they call Tropicana Center. We have finished the cinema places, 6 of them run by Silver Bells. It has broken record. Over 2,500 people per day, as I speak now, even from neighboring states. And within it, I'm building a second 5-star hotel for the state. I'm now on the 12th floor. It's handled by ITV. It's going to be about 14 to 16 stories. Because there is need for us to create a place for people to come because, of course, you know, I met a civil service team. Okay. And I'm building an international conference center in addition to a mini Disney for children. So when you are looking at these things, which, of course, major tourist attraction. I mentioned the airport yesterday. I've just given a contract for a second parallel runway.
Is that tourists from your state that you're targeting or tourists from other states?
No, I'm building it for you people, for Nigerians. It's not for Akwa Ibom and such. Our people may just go there once in a while. But I'm building it for Nigeria.
Can such be replicated in other states? Because I'm trying to use the word of Professor Shoyinka yesterday. I'm giving you a quote. He said, substituting strength for the weakness of your partners. So how, if you say you have done so well in Akwa Ibom State, for instance, in tourism and even education, how can you replicate that, for instance, in any state that is within the BRICS Commission that is lacking in that?
That's why we are holding this summit, and that's why we are looking at. We are saying, oh, our river state is producing electricity, so the number of wattage. Akwa Ibom is also producing. If we don't have one currently producing Bayelsa or Cross River, how can they benefit from it? That's why we are meeting, and we are looking at how can we integrate so that this development will go around. We are also looking at how can we open up the region. And of course, access road will become a problem. And most of them will be federal roads. But we have no qualms about that. We must intervene. And then we can also create a regional railway that will now link up with the national grid. It's very important. And then, of course, I mentioned something about the deep sea port. We have the best location for a deep sea port in Akwa Ibom, called Ibaka, that was never touched. And yet we are struggling with the congestion in Lagos. And we could at least create something out of that place for the Gulf of Guinea. And then we will have over 50,000 employees. So those are the reasons why we are discussing. We are also looking at some kind of regional industries where people can come in, and if you have an advantage of sugarcane in Delta State, then you can build an industry and then encourage them to produce it and then as raw materials, and from there our children all over the region will be employed in that processing. There is really there's no value chain as of now. You don't produce and everything dies. If you go and produce so much of corn during the corn season, shortly after that you don't see corn again in the market. So we must think of how can we do processing, how can we preserve. Preservation is important. Where and where? What is the best place for us to go and think of shrimp? Okay. We are not benefiting even from our shoreline. As I speak now, we have the best shrimps in the whole world, but it's outsiders, the Ghanaians, and people from other countries that come with their yachts, because we don't have the facilities to go and fish those things.
One important matter about all of this is security.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday you talked about advocating for state police, but comments has come from the center. Looks as if it's not really attracted or interested in that matter.
They may not be interested today, but I know that Nigeria will change.
How long?
Nigeria will change. It might not. It definitely will change in our time. We are very determined. We can't leave the same country that we have made for our children. We've done the same thing the same way for 50 years and no result. Then Nigeria must change. You go to America, you are talking about developed democracy. Where are we copying our democracy from? You see state paratroopers, you see federal police, you see even a municipal police. You have municipal policing, you have state policing, you have federal paratroopers. I'm going to be an ex-governor soon. I'm exiting. I'm not looking for it for myself. But I don't like this question of you sitting down in your community and then maybe there's a bomb blast somewhere and somebody's kidnapped and you as a state governor, your hands are tied because the commissioner of police is not available, maybe he has traveled, the director of SSS does not report to you, and because he's reporting to the center or the other security apparatus that you could use in fighting that crime, they will work at their own pace. I want to be able to fire somebody. I want to hire and fire. And I want to put a security on the front burner and tell my people, if you elect me as a governor, there will be no kidnapping in this state. I want to challenge every local government DPO to sit up. If we have 2 kidnaps in your area, you resign.
But you also raised what the challenge will be with that particular situation. You talked about people recruiting thugs in the name of security men.
Thugs are being recruited in many places because of the absence of police. That's a problem. You see, if you don't do things legally, then the illegality comes in. You remember, even in Anambra, there was a period they had, Bakassi boys that took over the functions of security agencies.
But they were effective.
Is it?
But they were effective.
You are saying they were effective.
In that particular state, it seemed like the fear of the Bakassi boys was the beginning of wisdom.
Which is you. You are now looking at me in the face and telling me that illegality was effective. But I don't think so. I think if they were well trained, what happened later would not have happened. Because some innocent people suffered. Because they were not trained to do proper investigations and all that. That's the truth. If they were well trained and kitted, today Anambra would have had peace. Of course, the criminals ran away from Anambra. I'm not going to boast about myself, but we are working very hard. And criminals will only try where they know that there is laxity. Right. And I'm telling you that the governor becomes a chief security officer in name. And Nigeria must change. If Nigeria must change, we must forget about this fear of secession. You know, are we actually together today? That is the issue. Unless we have proper security, nobody will really feel that Nigeria is knitted together. Do you understand? Because if I'm living in Kano and my name is Akwa, and I'm afraid that somebody will come in the night and pump bullets into my tummy and kill my children because I'm not from there, then automatically we haven't achieved the unity we are looking for. So every state government must be encouraged, no matter the policy that is being brought forward, to ensure security of lives and properties. And I think that's the primary objective of government, to bring security and peace, and then create a conducive environment for business to thrive. And so we mustn't just joke with it. We must explore other options if what we have done in the last 50 years has produced Boko Haram, and has produced the kind of kidnapping that we are seeing.